Hello there and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, my name is Michelle Emerson and I'm a 4th grade teacher in Maryland. At the beginning of March, my district transitioned into hybrid learning, which has been a challenge to say the least, and there have been some big learning curves. So in today's video, I wanted to share the top 7 tips that have helped me navigate hybrid learning. Now, I know schools and districts around the world are all doing hybrid learning in very different ways. For us, hybrid learning is done concurrently, which means I am teaching in-person students at the exact same time as I am teaching virtual students. That obviously has been a big challenge. So I'm going to share the top 7 tips that have worked for me and hopefully will work for you too. Even if you are teaching all in-person students and then maybe your virtual learners are asynchronous, hopefully you can still use some of these ideas to help you out. Also, if you are not yet following me on Instagram, please make sure that you do, because I'm sharing a lot more kind of daily tips and takeaways from hybrid learning over on there. So make sure you follow me at Pocketful Primary. The number 1 top tip that has been a game changer for me for hybrid learning is using a cart. Now, I'm gonna insert a picture of what my cart looks like over here. Essentially, it is a 3-tier cart. Mine came from IKEA, but you can also find them at Michael's and Target. I'm sure there's some on Amazon, so I will link a few different options for you down in the description box. But this cart is how I take my laptop with me around the room while I'm teaching. Obviously, because I have in-person students and virtual students at the same time, I don't want to leave my laptop or my virtual learners like in one corner of the room and be like, hey, I'll be right back while I check on my in-person learners. I just feel like that's very inequitable. So the cart allows me to take my virtual learners with me on the move, on the go, as I am moving around my room and checking in on my in-person learners. Now, because my laptop sits on that top tier and it wasn't quite tall enough, I actually put a 3-drawer Sterlite organizer on the top just to raise it up a little bit. You can use any kind of organizer to do this, or even a stack of books. I know my one team teacher is taller than me, so she had to use like a 3-drawer organizer and then put a book on top to raise it up even more. So find something that's gonna be the right height for you. On the middle level is where I keep all of my cleaning supplies or things that my in-person learners might need. So I have tissues, I have wet wipes, I have Lysol wipes. I don't give those to my students, but in case I need them, I have Band-Aids, all of those things that I want to have handy in case I need to give them to a student or in case I need to use them. Now, the bottom tier originally was empty. I didn't really have a purpose for it. Since then, I've started putting disposable masks down at the bottom. That way, if one of my in-person students needs a new mask, I can hand them one, but you can fully customize what you put on each level in order to fit your needs. Now, a few little mini tips to go along with this tip. First of all, if you are using any kind of a clicker, which I'm gonna come back to this later in the video, this is a way to click through slides or even NEARPOD. I actually have Velcro on mine. I used to have it attached to my document camera, so at the end of the day, I would stick it there. I now have put the Velcro onto my cart, so when I'm not using it, if I'm around the room, I can stick it onto the cart and I know that it is there for me. Tip number 2, you can give your cart a name. Better yet, you can let your students actually name it. I started by calling mine the Classroom on Wheels, and then I'm actually gonna let my students pick a name this week. I've also heard of teachers calling theirs Karen, like from SpongeBob, the little machine thing that Plankton had.
Karen,
Sorry, Planky Bear.
If you know, you know. And the 3rd tip is you can even add like giant googly eyes to the side of your cart. Once again, this is something that I am doing this week. I just ordered some on Amazon. So if you are also interested in that, I will link them down below. It comes with like 6 googly eyes. So, you can spread the love, give some to your team teachers, and I'm sure they would appreciate that. Tip number 2 is to give each group of students a name. I am so thankful for all the creative teachers out there who came up with this idea. This is not my original idea, but I heard of a lot of teachers who were using Zoom, calling their in-person students roomers and calling their virtual students Zoomers. And I thought that was adorable, but we use Google Meet. So I have instead been calling my in-person students roomers and then my virtual students Googlers. Now, the reason I really like to have a name for each group of students is because it makes it easier for me me to draw attention to which group I want to participate in that moment. So for example, if I want one of my roomers to answer a question, I'll say, hey roomers, and then they know that I want one of them to volunteer. Or if I want one of my virtual students to say something, I'll say, hey Googlers, and then they know that I'm talking to them. And of course, you can fully customize this. You could even have each group come up with their own name, or maybe you could change the name on like a monthly basis to kind of keep it fun and interesting, but I highly recommend having a different way to kind of refer to each group of students. And to go along with that, tip number 3 is to call on each group equitably. When I first started hybrid teaching, I felt like I was being pulled in so many different directions because I was trying to give attention to my virtual students and I was trying to give attention to my in-person students, and it was very difficult. So for me, having a go-to way to make sure that I'm calling on each group of students equitably has been a game changer. Now you can go totally old school with this and create actual equity sticks, which are essentially a cup or a jar with popsicle sticks, and each popsicle stick has a different student's name on it, and then you just pull out a stick and call on that student. But I would recommend having a separate cup of sticks for each group of students. So you can have one for your roomers and one for your Zoomers or your Googlers. That way, you know, if you just alternate between those cups, you're going to be alternating calling on an in-person student and a virtual student. But if you are willing to embrace technology, which I feel like we all should be at this point, you can actually utilize Wheel of Names. Wheel of Names is a free website. I plan on doing a future video all about how to use it, but it allows you to create these virtual wheels by just copying and pasting the students' names on the side. Then you can spin the wheel and it will choose a student. I really like that you can customize how long the wheel spins for, if there's any sound effects, the colors. It makes it really easy to make your wheel exactly what you want. What I have done is actually created a wheel for each different group of students. So I have a wheel for my roomers and I have a wheel for my Googlers. I actually will open up one tab that has the wheel for my roomers, and I will open up another tab that has the wheel for my Googlers. So that way, instead of reopening up the wheel through the website each time, I can just click back and forth between the tabs, spin the wheel in order to call on a student. Tip number 4 is to repeat, repeat, repeat. Repeat, repeat, repeat. Here's what I mean by that. I have noticed through hybrid learning that it is very difficult for the students to hear each other. My in-person students are not logging on to Google Meet, mostly because the internet would be super slow if they were all on Google Meet. It would make things very laggy, and I don't want them to be on the Chromebook any more than they have to. But since they are not in the Google Meet, sometimes it's hard for them to hear the virtual students, and it's really hard for the virtual students to hear the in-person students. Now, because I am logged on to Google Meet through my laptop, which if you're curious about my technology setup for hybrid, make sure you go back and watch my last video because I go through all of the details in there. But because I am in the Google Meet on my laptop, when a virtual student talks, the sound does come out of my laptop. So my in-person students can hear it, but if I'm in the front of the room and they're in the back of the room, it's not super loud. And vice versa, when an in-person student speaks, my virtual students can almost never hear them unless I have the laptop right next to the student who is speaking. So I am constantly repeating what students have said. If I call on an in-person student to answer a question, after they finish speaking, I'm going to completely reiterate and repeat what they said so that my virtual learners can hear. And vice versa, when a virtual learner answers a question, I then repeat what they said in case any of my in-person students could not hear them. Even though this is time consuming and it definitely takes getting used to, I do think it's very beneficial for students to hear things multiple times. So even if my in-person students could hear the virtual student when they shared, me repeating it and saying it maybe just a slightly different way is going to be helpful for them. Tip number 5 is to allow students to collaborate. One of my biggest concerns when we transitioned to hybrid was the fact that it was going to make collaboration more difficult. However, I've actually found it easier to facilitate student collaboration in a hybrid format. Now, my absolute favorite way to have my students collaborating is to actually pair up a virtual learner and an in-person learner through a breakout room. Now, we have not been able to use breakout rooms because with Google Meet, you cannot be in in every breakout room at the same time. Therefore, we cannot always monitor the students, and so we could not use breakout rooms. But now, because I have half my students in person, I will actually pair them up with a virtual student, and that way I can monitor all of the students because I can look at all of the screens of my in-person learners. Another way that I've allowed my students to collaborate is through Google Slides or Jamboard. I really love having Jamboard up on my board. I will have it presented to my virtual learners, and my in-person learners can see it as well. And I will actually have an in-person learner get on their Chromebook, join into the Jamboard, and demonstrate like their work for a math problem, for example, on the Jamboard. And that way my virtual learners can see what they are doing in real time. You can also use this in conjunction with those breakout rooms. You can have an in-person student and a virtual student share a Jamboard or a set of Google Slides. They can be in a breakout room together working on an activity. Tip number 6 is to focus on digital first and then adapt it. You should not, under any circumstances, have to be designing 2 completely different lessons for your in-person students and your virtual students. Let me repeat that. You should not be creating 2 separate lessons. Instead, create a lesson that will be fitting for your virtual learners first, and then just adapt it for your in-person students. Now, I had previously shared that I was using NEARPOD to teach every single lesson, and that is still the case. If you want to go back and watch that video to see exactly how I create the NEARPOD lessons, you can. I will link it for you down in the description box. When we transitioned to hybrid, I stuck with that NEARPOD format. It's something that all of my students were familiar with, so that way during this hectic time, my students didn't have to learn any new technology. Now, because NEARPOD is fantastic for virtual learning, I will share out the link so my virtual students will join into the NEARPOD, and I will be projecting that NEARPOD for my in-person students. Now, I actually give my in-person students a choice. They can, if they want to, join into the NEARPOD like normal. They're still not in the Google Meet, but they can use their Chromebook to join into the NEARPOD. Even though it's on my screen, they can also have it on their Chromebook right in front of them. Since my in-person students are not joining into the Google Meet, I will actually post the NEARPOD link on my Google Classroom stream page. That way they can join in even without getting the link from the chat in Google Meet. I am still designing just 1 lesson through the NEARPOD, but I am giving my in-person students a little bit of choice. They can still work on it digitally on their Chromebook, or they can just use a whiteboard, and that means I don't even have to make any copies. Keep in mind, you can always create like a template or something that you could slip into a dry erase pocket that your in-person students could use if they need some kind of structure or organizer for that lesson. And finally, tip number 7 is to find the tools that work for you. We're all different, we all have different preferences and opinions, and that's perfectly fine. Don't worry about doing the exact same thing that you see another teacher doing, whether that's a teacher on social media or even another teacher in your building. Instead, find the things that work specifically for you and your needs and your students' needs. For example, PPE and masks. Now, we are allowed to wear face shields, but we still have to wear a mask. So personally, I am just wearing a mask, and I have found that the cheap kind of disposable masks have actually worked best for me while I am teaching. They're lighter weight, I feel like it's easier for me to breathe, and it's easier for my students to hear me versus a like cloth or fabric mask. I bought these in a 50-pack on Amazon. Of course, they're my favorite color, they're black, so I will link them for you down in the description box if you are interested. But I know some teachers like the masks where you can put in like a plastic insert that kind of keeps it away from your face. However, I personally have tried it and I felt like it made my face very raw and it made it more hot, and I did not like it. So I'm sticking with the disposable mask because that works for me. You can also use some type of a voice amplifier or a microphone if needed. Now, my school actually has these light speed microphones that hang around our neck. I will insert a picture of it so you kind of have an idea of what I'm talking about. I will link them for you down in the description box, but it's not really something that an individual would buy. It's more so something that a school would buy and then implement. But that is something that will project my voice through my classroom speakers. I did try it and I didn't really feel like it was necessary. My in-person students could hear me fine even without the microphone. I tend to be pretty loud when I'm teaching. And my virtual students, they said it added a little bit of like an echo, so they actually preferred when I didn't use it. But I know some teachers have really liked getting voice amplifiers off of Amazon. I will link a possible one for you. So if that that's something you want to try out, feel free, but again, find the tools that are going to work best for you. You might also want to consider using a wireless mouse or a clicker. I have been using a very basic wireless mouse that I got on Amazon, and I actually use this with my desktop computer. Since I have my laptop on a cart with me around the room, I don't really need a wireless mouse. But because I am running all of my tabs through my desktop computer, which again, go back and watch my hybrid technology setup video so you know what I'm talking about, I have this wireless mouse connected to my desktop and I carry it with me so I can still use the mouse with my desktop computer even when I'm on the other side of the room. However, I've also seen wireless mice, right? Yeah, mice, that you can actually connect Bluetooth to multiple devices and easily switch back and forth. So again, choose what's gonna work for you. Another option is to have a clicker. I think it's actually called a wireless presenter. I just call it my clicker, but I will use this around the room in order to click through the NEARPOD slides. This is something that I use way before COVID just to click through my slideshows. So this might be something worth investing in if you think that that will work for you. Finally, you might want to consider some type of a headphone. I personally teach my Block 2 class, which is my afternoon group of students. I still teach them fully virtual. So in the afternoon, my in-person students, they log on to their Chromebook with their Block 2 teacher since we cannot move classrooms, and I log in with my Block 2 students. I actually wear my AirPods. That way they're wireless. If I have to get up away from my computer, maybe one of my in-person students needs help, my virtual students, see, it's so confusing. My virtual students will still be able to hear me and I can still hear them through the wireless headphones. But I know that some teachers prefer the ones that actually have the little microphone that comes out. So find a pair of headphones that will work for you, or you might consider not even using headphones depending on what your hybrid setup is like. And then finally, when it comes to a water bottle, you probably want to get one with a straw. That way you can easily sneak it up under your mask in order to take water breaks throughout the day, because I know personally, teaching in a mask has made my throat so much more dry, and I feel like I have to drink a lot more water throughout the day. So that is it. Those are my top 7 tips for hybrid teachers. I really hope this was helpful for you, and if it was, give the video a thumbs up. I know some of you are teaching only in-person students, and then some of you are teaching concurrently like myself. Hopefully you got at least one idea that you will be able to implement in your instruction. Go ahead and leave a comment down below if you have any other must-have tools or tips for other hybrid teachers. I would love to hear them, and I know others would as well. Go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already so that you do not miss any future videos. As always, thank you for watching. I love you all so much. Don't forget to put your positive pants on, and I will catch you in the next one.